The man, the myth, the legend, Ed Leedskalnin. Alright guys, this is Roy. Hello my fellow YouTubers. Tonight on this video, we're going to talk about a couple different topics. If you notice, there's keepers around the outside of my flywheel. It's to keep all the energy flowing between the north and south of each individual magnet. That'll keep them strong. They're like little kids. They need a job. They need something to do. So if you keep that in there, it'll keep the flowing through. And now that we're doubling up, so what you'll have is it'll do the same thing here, and then it'll branch out. So we kind of widen the magnetic field on these. And so that's one of the things you notice. And then I also started the ring, and also I started the coil. This is an 1.5" soft iron stock, copper wire, magnetic copper wire, insulated around the outside here between the two. And this is going to be the coil that goes down into this iron pipe that I have with a flange going down in the ground every bit of 3 feet. And we're going to drop this puppy down in there, and we're going to create this to have a north pole on the top, a south pole on the bottom, and the magnetic field from this pipe is going to come up, come around, turn around, go down, and come back up again. It's going to do it all the way around the pipe, and it's going to come out in different layers. I'm going to put a lot of power going through this pipe, so it's going to give me the capability of doing a lot of pulling and a lot of pushing. And that's where this comes into play. And say if you have your north pole here approaching the pipe is going to be south on the top, and it will pull in this section. And then as it's coming to the middle, the second set of the other side of those magnets, the south pole, will be coming into play, and the pipe will reverse its poles. And by doing so, it'll pull in the next magnet, and it'll push out the magnet that already approached, that's now going away. So it's gonna give it the power to drive this wheel. And one thing I wanted to mention about this coil here is that it will also have another effect, because with this being a north or south on the top or bottom of the pipe, but it also at the center core. If you look at Ed Leedskalnin's books, magnetic current, and he mentions that there is a way of getting more energy and losing less, because the energy likes to get out and escape, and to keep it in is you surround a core with wire, and then you surround it with iron pipe, and then you connect the core at the top to the pipe, and what you have there is a strong lifting device. But what you also have there is a strong pulling or pushing device too. So take that in consideration. So then you got that, and then also there's some things that I wanted to talk about, which was some of Ed's writings. This is an old book that I got back, I think in '80. My friend gave me a book back in, I think, 81-ish, 2 or 3, and it was that book and some other 2 other books about Ed Leedskalnin. And the funny thing is, I kept the books. I even built the Hilton down in Key West and lived down there for a year, and drove by Coral Castle as I was living in Fort Lauderdale, at least twice every week, because I come home on weekends, and for a year. and never stopped at Coral Castle. Although I had these books, I just glanced through them and that was it. It's a rock garden to me, and it's just weird, crazy, and I was young, probably 18 at the time, something like that, 17, maybe even 16. So, but that's a funny story. So, as I retired 2 years ago, I picked up the book, started reading them, and bam, did I get hooked. So, been to Coral Castle. Some of you guys had mentioned some about what's my experience. Is this just from pictures and stuff like that? And basically, the history is drove by, yada yada, didn't go stop there. And now I've been there 5 times, and every time I've been there, I spent at least 3 to 4 hours measuring, looking at stuff, digging into it, analyzing it, just asking myself, what if you were Ed? What do you do in here? What's going on? And pretty much what you're looking at Coral Castle is this with the handle and the top clover ring, and pretty much that's it. So with that being said, nothing's showing. There's no copper showing. All the copper that was inside or whatever, Joe Bullard mentioned that there was miles of copper inside of it. I don't know where he got that information, but in order to make any of this metal do anything, you're going to have to create magnetic fields. So look at what he has. That's all I have for information. That's all I have to go on. I don't have much, but so far it's been going on a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I didn't know anything about electric, but just don't know anything, stay away from it, and I liked magnets my whole life. So at this juncture, I know a lot about electric, and I know a lot about magnets. So, may not be the smartest guy on the block. Only graduated 9th grade. Did go back get my GED. But I am putting my heart and soul in this project. It's beautiful, beautiful piece of machinery here. Now, some had said that it was only a stator that Ed Leedskalnin had. Let's talk about Ed. He didn't use it to have electric at the house. He didn't have anything that had electric. I tell you what he did have is a pair of shoes that he took over to the shoemakers and had them put metal attached to the bottom of the shoes. And he also, through my investigations, he, just being at Coral Castle, he had not poles, but he had attachments coming off the top of the walls, and there was copper wire or steel wire, I don't know, running across the top of the compound in many directions. And also, through my study being at Coral Castle, on top of the Ed's house, there's leftover wire coiled up there. That, to me, that would pretty much send out a signal to his tripods. Also, I was in Ed's living quarters, and as I'm laying in his bed looking up, there's a hole in the ceiling with crosshairs. That made me look on the ground, and I noticed another hole, and it didn't have crosshairs. So I walked down the steps and looked into the workshop down where this machine is sitting, and the hole's covered up. Somebody had put tar paper in between the rafters. So I didn't make any sense to it until a couple days ago. And sunlight coming through the top hole, through the bottom hole, and aiming right towards the center of his magnetic flywheel down there. Seems to be in line. I'm not going to say much more about it, but I will tell you I noticed it. And for anybody who's been at Coral Castle, I remember I listened to Richie's video. God, dude, Richie, that was a great video. I love your video about Coral Castle. This is, you're holding me to, dude. I like to meet you sometime. But anyway, you know, nobody talked about it, and I'm the only one who's been thinking about that in the process of making Ed's wheel. So my experience with this would just be, I know the measurements. I don't know what's in the cements, but I will tell you from just understanding things, especially about if he was into nature and natural laws of physics, you can pretty much count on that this is built off the way the planet runs, without the molten and all that stuff. You know, it ain't got the center mantles and all that. But what you do have is, if this is created as an atom, what it will do is through this pipe that goes in the ground, that's in the ground, will draw on Earth's energy, and it will funnel it out the top, and it will recycle itself. So this is sort of a minute idea why this wheel even exists. I want to say to everybody that I have that book that we talked about. We got Ed Leedskalnin's Minerals, Vegetables, and Animal Life. And some people had said that if you cross the magnetic current, that's symbol up there that Ed poses on some literature as a positive and negative, and you put it in the bottom, I guess you can just turn it and either put it that way or go that way with it, that it did something. So what? You know, what did it do? Well, he had several of these things. Army Corps engineers, I found out, that went down there during after hurricane, the big hurricane in Andrew, and pretty much covered up all the old pits. He had a couple other, one or two more pits in there, and they were loaded up with these guys. So he used a lot of these for different things, like he mentioned in the writings about you can use it for 3 different things: transformer, whatever else he mentions. But anyway, so you know, there's so much to go on here. I mean, we're all over the place. So with magnetic currents, you got Ed's picture here that pretty much, you know, you got, okay, here's the wheel. You have that box in front of the wheel. And then you got a chain coming down from it. Then also, I don't know if you noticed, but there's right there is a wire. It comes up, runs all the way up to the top here. Oh my God, look at that. That's the hook, the bottom part of this hoist. And it's sitting right on top of this. Now this right here was what I was trying to question everybody. It's either one of these as a capacitor on top of this. Maybe in a sense you use that to break down the system, collapse it, or it was not in this picture, but there's a Model T Ford DC generator off a 12-volt battery that's there. That's either for cycling, to have a cycle for this, or it was to produce AC, because this right here makes AC current to DC, and to allow it to get stronger, like, you know, a spark plug in the car. Talk about cars. I don't mean to defer from this guy, but we'll go back to that. Defer. So, story that I heard, that Ed Huff was the electrical engineer for Henry Ford to design a charging system for the Model T Fords, because the lights were using the energy from the batteries. After the batteries were done, they were dry cell, they throw them away. So as the chemists got into making regular wet cell batteries, Ed Huff was the engineer. If you guys ever want to look up Model T Ford charging system, and you'll see it's similar to this wheel, but it's only 16 magnets going around, and then there's these little coils that sit there and it attaches to the flywheel. And as you turn the flywheel, it would go past the coil and it would be a charging system for the Model T Ford. So Ed Huff, beautiful, crazy stories I heard about how he lived and how eccentric he was. But also, funny story, I heard that Henry Ford would have to get in touch with Ed Huff. He couldn't find Ed Huff, hasn't been around for a while. He would send out Henry Ford would send out one of his workers to go find him, and usually he would find them in risque houses or places to where he shouldn't be, and just carousing or whatever. So it's just cool stories. But back to Ed Huff, when he retired to Homestead. And I haven't seen anything, and I got no proof, but I believe that Ed Huff and Ed Leedskalnin didn't meet, were sort of friends, because this sort of, to me, replicates off of that system. So you got the Ed Huff story. You got my dog barking in the back. We're going to go back to this section here, and we're going to talk, because I just got distracted because my dog's over there barking. So you do have this box here. You do have the chain. Something you notice, the chain comes down, comes around, wraps around, comes up, goes to here. If you notice, they are two different types of chains. There's a thinner chain that's right there, and then there's thicker chain that's here. Something I want you guys to notice. He's turning the wheel. As he turns the wheel, it's putting a charge into that chain. Chains don't do that. Chains don't do that. That only is done through some of my experiments with chains. They tighten up and wrap around. You wrap them around each other, they'll stay, and they tighten up. That's because there's a charge going through there. So what he's working with is induction. He's inducting power to go through here, and I believe that this here goes up through the roof and sends out a radio wave to the tripods. And then at that moment, he figured out a way to figure out the residency of the stone that he's dealing with, and all you have to do is give the electrons a job, and pretty much from there, if you can get into anything by moving electrons around, you unbalance the stability of that, whatever it is, and you can make it do what you want to do with it, levitate it or whatever. So look at the chains. You can see how they're tightened up. Something else I want you to look at. Ready? So we see that leaning against the top there. So the top of that is sending out probably all the energy from that pipe is going out through that. Capacitance going up through here and coming out through there. So he's sending an induction out through there. But another thing that nobody had mentioned, if you look at this right there and that coming down, that goes up. If you really, really look good, right there, that's a wire. That's a wire that comes up and it wraps. See it wrapping around the chain link. It's wrapping around the chain coming down to this pipe. This pipe goes up, and goes upstairs through the pipe doesn't penetrate into his up quarters because I think it was disconnected or taken down, but it goes up through there. So this is what I have to work on, and then just being there with measurements. That's the experience this guy has. This to me, spark gap, that had copper wrapped around it. There's still pieces sitting on the top. The rest is all rotted away. If you look at the bar going across the top, this is just wire coming down. There's a old, right here is a old valve drilled in, sticking in here, and there's another one over here. Wire pulling down, so it pulls both of these straight down, tightens them up. This bar pretty much sits over the top of these V-shaped magnets. And remember I mentioned that we're expanding the field from this to it being double wide. Well, that box is taking up the same amount of width on the magnets. So that bar is sitting right on top of the magnets, because the magnets have two things going on them. One, they're also pushing straight streams out the top and the bottom, and also straight out. So for instance, like right now I got the keeper on, so it is mainly focusing through the keeper running back. And on the inside you'll have your south pole, and on the outside you'll have your north pole, and then you have your neutral in the middle here. So if you look at individual magnets, you can figure out this thing to be, just a bigger version than you look at the Earth. But anyway, no more rambling on. You got this, you got that. You kind of see how and what I'm dealing with. And then I got his writings, and not getting into any of these, but pretty much they're all great. So if you guys, you can always, I think, go online, Coral Castle, and I think you can pay for it with a credit card and get, I guess you can get most of these. You can get that one, you get that one, that one, that one. You won't get that one. That's an old one. They don't make no more. And I got a couple other ones with the Giza pyramids and all that stuff. And they talk about leeway lines and just all the stuff about Ed Leedskalnin's placement of where he was. Going back to that, I believe that he tried to put a patent in. And what happens is the government wanted the machine, and of course he couldn't take the machine. So they came in and tried to shake him down and sent some thugs over and beat him down. He just rolled up and moved. And I think ever since to that point, he pretty much didn't trust nobody, and he would not let anybody ever see anything or do anything. That's how I read into it. And guys, leave your comments. I like comments. Please leave your comments. All right. But anyway, you guys have a good night. This is moving on forward with Ed Leedskalnin's wheel. Like I said, we'll talk about, you got the top of these coils and the bottom of the coil. On the top, we're sending out a positive. We're going to concentrate it in the ring. We're going to treat this ring on top just like Ed Leedskalnin's perpetual motion holder. We are going to, once you just turn it on and off, you get the power running, and it runs forever. So that means we're going to treat the top part of this the same way. So we're going to get it going in there. Once we get it going, it's going to be free flowing, and we're going to send a charge from the top through there, and then I'll show you guys where we're going to send the top and bottom both are sitting on top here. So we're going to be separating the two currents, and we're going to show you how to lift up and make this pyramid that I was talking about, and how we can use the magnetic field from this to move this. And then at this point, I haven't really talked much about it, but at this point, I love this. I don't want to do it right now, but I got this glass here with these shavings, and it's very easy to see when you're turning this what's going on. And the magnetic field that's here runs the opposite direction, but it stays parallel, straight out from the lines. It doesn't move forward or back. But once you start adding, I ain't gonna tell you how I did it right now, but as you start adding a charge on the outside, I noticed that the instead of it being parallel straight up, it did the same thing up higher. So that means I actually moved the field on an angle. So the more power you put in the inside part of it, the higher the field you can get to raise up until you get it all to raise in sequence between these 4 poles to the same point, which will be the top of that handle. And then at that point you had created, it should pull natural energy in from the ground through it, and it should recycle its own energy and just run. And then, like I said, if you go to the PMH out over there, you just pull that bar off, you break the circuit, so it'll just turn off. But anyway, you guys have a great night. Thanks for watching my videos. Hopefully that you're liking them. I want more comments, man. I'm looking. That's all I do all day is at my other job, which I own a restaurant. I own it. I pretty much look at my videos, see who's leaving comments, because I love the comments. It means it gets me even more into it. But all right, man. You guys have a great night. Peace out.